Most of our billing is traditional mobile billing, whether direct to bill through the mobile internet or whether it's through PSMS. And that will continue to be the case. And of course, that's actually underpinning what Boku and Zong are doing with Android one-click billing. It just takes place in the background and the user doesn't have to get involved in a messy interface. So no, they have a big role to play. A lot will depend on the skill and speed with which the carriers cooperate. It's probably the best way of doing it, or innovate. I think this is very self-serving from a Flirtomatic point of view, and one would expect a developer to say it. But I think if the carriers chose to compete on price, they would win a lot of fans in the developer base. So, you know, typically 70/30 has been established by Apple as a price point. I think you can do better than that, and I think the carriers know they can do better than that, and I would expect to see that hitting the market very soon. And clearly the difference for a developer between 70/30 and 90/10 is a very big difference. You know, that's not just icing on the cake, that gives you the cake. You know, last year we grew our revenues by slightly over 50%. All of that came from in-app billing rather than from advertising revenues. So we're still hopeful, and I think long term, all of us passionately believe mobile advertising is going to be very big, a very, very big part of advertising, and will, you know, develop its own formats, which probably look different from what we have at the moment. But last year was not the year when we saw explosive growth in that in terms of revenue, though undoubtedly the mobile advertising side is growing, and you can see it here as well. There's a lot of activity. So I'm hopeful that I think 2 years' time we'll see a very different picture in terms of the revenue stream coming from advertising. I think the billing landscape is changing a lot right now. So it began to change really last year when Boku and Zong in particular, and other companies like Mindmatics, began to turn their attention to mobile billing on the mobile rather than mobile billing on websites, which had been their previous business remit. And the first we really saw that getting the light today was when they both announced, both those first two companies announced on the same day, probably not coincidentally, that they were doing what they called Android one-click billing. So that Android one-click billing is real. It's out there in the market now. We're testing it and we're seeing how well it performs. It looks good. I think a huge question mark has been thrown into what's happening next by Google themselves, who announced a week and a half ago that they're going to do in-app billing themselves. So with a little bit of detective work, we certainly found out they've integrated directly with AT&T and T-Mobile. I don't know whether that's public yet, but it, you know, definitely the news is out there. And it looks like they're, you know, one can only surmise they're working hard to connect directly with Verizon and Sprint as well. So that would be all the tier 1 carriers. What will happen to tier 2, I don't know, in the US tier 1 carriers. What's unknown, and certainly something I want to find out while I'm here, is the speed at which they're bringing that to market. Because, you know, they definitely need a billing platform which competes head-on with iPhone. And then I think, you know, there are other sort of wildcard players out there as well. Amazon, who are bringing their App Store to market soon, and Facebook credits as well. So I don't think Facebook credits are about to cede the mobile billing space only to Google and Apple without doing something, and I would expect to see some interesting activity from them. I mean, I have no idea, I have no inside track on this. One would just guess you would see some interesting activity over the next year.